Welcome to Chartwell, the beloved country home of Winston Churchill, a place where, even in the darkest days of his political career, he could retreat into something resembling a normal family life. A day from Chartwell, he once remarked, is a day wasted. It was the house's elevated position above the Weald that first captivated him when he came to view it. So taken was he that he urged Clementine to see it too. She was cautious. Any country house, she warned, must be a rest and joy, not a preoccupation. But when she arrived, she too was spellbound. "My darling, I can think of nothing but that heavenly tree-crowned hill," she wrote. "It's rather like a view from an aeroplane." Set here in the garden of England, this is what Churchill so cherished and feared might one day be invaded. It was also his refuge where he painted, wrote and spent moments of peace with his family. And then, of course, he had his hands on the land, creating all sorts of things, taking up bricklaying, becoming a proud member of the Brickies Union. This year, as we mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day, we reflect on what that victory meant, not just for Britain, but for the world. We all know the historic images and the stirring speeches that defined Churchill as a wartime leader. But what of the man behind those moments? What was Churchill really like at home? And could he ever truly leave behind the burdens of war when he walked these gardens or worked with his hands? To find out, we're going to meet someone who knows just what Chartwell meant to Winston Churchill and why he loved it so much, and how it was a financial headache from day one. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for inviting me here. I've always wanted to see Chartwell. And here we are in what you call Lady Churchill's sort of drawing room.
This was a sitting room, but then also in later life she used it as a bedroom. So yes, we always associate this room with Lady Churchill, very much so.
And what is amazing, what this room says to me really, is that, I mean, Chartwell is big and the grounds are huge and wonderful. But actually, once you're inside, it's quite cosy, or at least it is in this room.
Yes, I mean, I think it's very much a family home. It's a domestic space. It doesn't feel like a grand stately home. It feels like a family home. And yeah, I think the scale of it is one of the things our visitors love, because you can really feel like the Churchills lived here. It's very much where they were comfortable.
And it still feels that way all these years later.
Yes, well, Lady Churchill, in the years after Winston died, worked with the Trust to recreate how Churchill was in the 1930s. So she talked about the 1930s being the heyday of Chartwell. So yes, this is absolutely how it would have been lived in. And all the way through the house, you can see kind of her flair for design and decor and making it a very beautiful place, but also a very kind of real, comfortable home.
It must be fantastic to work here because you can soak in the atmosphere. But just arriving now, you do get this feeling that, you're living and breathing the space that they lived in. And he was, in his own words, a very great man.
He was, and actually it's sometimes easy to forget when you work here some of the things that happened here, some of the speeches that were written here, that really influenced world history in the years before the war. His books that he won the Nobel Prize for Literature for were written here, many of them, and also the guests that came here, royalty, film stars, but also really important political connections of Churchill's who came here in the pre-war years and were very much part of his thinking about the threat that the Nazis posed. So yeah, it's a place where history has really happened.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting because Churchill actually was born in Oxfordshire.
Yes.
I don't know whether he knew this area of the country very well at all. So what drew him to Chartwell? Do we know? Why did he want to come here? And why did he love it so much?
So we always say that Chartwell is all about the view, and that's absolutely, I think, what Churchill fell in love with. In fact, the house itself was problematic when he came here. It dates back some parts to the Tudor times, but had been added to over the generations. It was a bit of a hodgepodge of different bits of architecture. It was damp. It had structural problems. So it was the house was a bit of a problem. But here at Chartwell, we're at the top of a valley, so it feels really secluded. We have hills around through three sides, but then there's the most amazing panoramic view across the Weald and across the countryside. And I think that's what he fell in love with. And in fact, his wife, Clementine, when she came here, she said it was like being in an aeroplane because you're high up and you have this amazing vantage point. And then at the same time, you're really close to London. So his guests and his friends and his political connections could visit him here. So I think it was a real case of location,
Yes.
rather than the house itself when he first came.
Yes, I mean, they say that when he used to look at the view, that's what he treasured so much. This is absolute perfection, English countryside. And I suppose that made him feel very emotional about, at some point, the threat of Nazi jackboots marching all over Kent.
Yes, and of course, we're here, my family grew up in Kent, and so I know that during the war, this is very much the front line in the Battle of Britain with, aeroplanes flying across Kent to London. So you do really feel in this part of the country that Europe is not at all far away. And I think that must have been part of his thinking as well when he moved here.
So he fell in love with it straight away. And then he showed it to Clemmy.
Yes.
And I'm told that while she loved the idea, loved the countryside, the feeling of being in an aeroplane looking down at the country, that she was worried that he was taking on a project instead of finding a place of retreat, that he was going to work at it. And he did work at it, didn't he?
He really did. And I think Clemmy loved the view, but she was a very sensible woman. And she could see that the amount of money that was needed to turn Chartwell into the home that they really wanted was probably beyond their means, and that the running costs would be difficult for them. So I think that was always a worry of hers. And in fact, when he made an offer on Chartwell, he didn't tell Clementine, and they were a real team, so that was unusual for them. But I think she did embrace it over the years, and you can see how she put her stamp on it. It really was a project. They have added wings to the house and really changed the layout, really to embrace the views, added windows, but then they also landscaped the gardens, they extended the lakes. There's beautiful gardens that Clementine saw at Chelsea Flower Show and invited designers to come here. So there's a real sense that, they really express their love of design here.
And they did make it very much a family place, as you said. This is where the children were with them. And lots of animals and pets.
Yes, they loved their animals. Their daughter Mary kept goats here. They had a dog called Rufus. It's also very famous for the black swans that I think were gifted to Churchill and he loved. And there are fish ponds, and he really loved animals. And that was it. And that's one of the things that makes it feel like a wonderful family home. But the other thing I personally love about Chartwell is that he was hands-on. So he built a lot of the walls here. He got the children to come and help him with bricklaying. It really feels like a labour of love. And as well as, that obviously feeds into that sense of it being a family.
Now, the other thing, a lot of people, I suppose, think of Churchill being in Downing Street, which he was for a long time. Yeah. But when he came back here, he used to love inviting really important people here.
Yes. And in fact, I think particularly in the 1930s, when we talk about those as being Churchill's wilderness years, when he wasn't in government, he was out of favour politically, so he wasn't connected and in meetings and receiving briefings and papers. And at that point, Chartwell became really important because it was a private place away from London where people could come and visit him. He had friends in the Foreign Office and academics who would come here and talk with him, but also as he began to be seen as a leader in terms of being a voice that was raising concerns about Hitler and Germany. People from Germany, Czechoslovakia, America would come here to meet with him, and really kind of under the guise of lovely lunches and beautiful weekends in the countryside, some really important meetings happened that really fed Churchill's understanding of what was happening in Europe.
There are some famous pictures of Einstein in the garden with him.
In the Rose Garden.
How did that happen?
So yes, Einstein left Germany due to the persecution that he was experiencing there. And for him, he really wanted to let people know what was happening in Germany, raise concern about the fate of academics that was happening, and try and help other Germans to leave. So he came and travelled both in Great Britain and America in order to talk to people. And Churchill was one of the people he really wanted to talk to. So yes, he came here in the early 1930s, and we have an amazing photo of him in the Rose Garden, the two great characters in history together.
Absolutely. As you say, it was very clever, really, under the guise of just come down for a country weekend.
Yeah.
He was actually being exceptionally well briefed
Yes.
by people he chose to well, he chose to get to know.
Yes, and in the later 1930s, there were people who, even people within Germany who would send people here to talk to Churchill because they saw him as a really key ally and voice in Great Britain at that time. So it kind of gathered pace over the course of the decade. But I think also Clementine was really important in that process because she was the wonderful hostess who would make sure it was a very warm and welcoming and convivial place where people would relax and these conversations could happen. So it was a real partnership between the Churchill family at that time.
Yes, it was a partnership right to the end of their lives,
Yeah.
but it was also a love match, wasn't it? They were truly in love with each other.
I think she was one of the people that could really speak openly and honestly with Churchill and was by his side.
Chartwell changed a lot over the years. You said
Yes.
they added this and they added that, and of course the movies always show Churchill out there creating a lake where there wasn't one.
Yes.
And so they were both very hands-on. This was a project, but it was a years-long project.
Yes, absolutely. So the work on the lake was in the 1930s, so they'd already been here for 10 years by that point. So yes, I can only imagine. It's incredibly beautiful now, but it must have been a hive of activity and there would have been always something going on and changing. There was a natural lake here and Churchill had the vision to say, actually, I want to extend that and make that larger. So he really did. He was always obviously thinking about how to sculpt kind of the ideal garden and landscape that he could look out on.
So when Churchill eventually did return to power,
Yes.
and then became Prime Minister, did he manage to get down to Chartwell very often at all?
Not when he was Prime Minister. He lived at Downing Street, but one of the reasons for that was that there was quite a concern that Chartwell would be bombed by the Germans because of where it is and because it's very distinctive.
Because it's on the bombing route to London, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the route to London. And also the lakes are very distinctive. So actually, Churchill decided to cover up and obscure the lakes so it wouldn't be so obvious.
Oh.
But yes, it does mean that Chartwell was slightly mothballed during the war, but then they returned in 1945 and came back. We have a beautiful image of them in an open-top car coming through Westerham as they came back. So yeah, they came back as soon as they could.
Yes, and that must have been so cathartic for him too. I mean, I know he was booted out. He said he got the order of the boot when, surprisingly, after the war, he wasn't voted back into power, which hurt a lot. But at least it meant that he could come back to Chartwell.
Yes, and I think life was very different after the war. He was a great international statesman. Part of the collection here is gifts that were sent to him from all around the world and accolades and gratitude from many different countries. So although life changed, and I think it was difficult for him to lose that leadership role, he was able to enjoy and actually just receive those thanks in the years after the war. But of course, he stayed a politician. He was Prime Minister again later in life.
Amazingly
so it wasn't over, but there was definitely a moment to perhaps realise what he'd achieved.
But then, as you said before, when he did die, and after that incredible funeral, Lady Churchill decided she couldn't take this place on her own anymore.
So in fact, the house was gifted to the National Trust before Churchill died, and there were some benefactors who decided to buy it at that time, and the Churchills are very much part of the decision that it should be made open to the public. And then after Churchill's death, Lady Clementine decided to stay in London, but then she worked with the Trust to, be very much involved with their daughter Mary Soames in making sure that they portrayed the house as it was when they lived here.
Well, let's have a look at it then. Right, this is the drawing room. I must say, I almost recognise it because it has been in so many movies.
Yes, it is a really beautiful room, and it's in the wing of the house that the Churchills created in order to have views on three sides of the room.
Yes.
So yes, it's one of the most beautiful rooms in the house.
And they created it. You said yourself that they liked to, when they did add to the house, they created rooms with light coming in from all areas.
Absolutely. It was all about capturing the view and enjoying light at different types of day. And this was their entertaining room where guests, when they first arrived, would come and have a glass of sherry and gather before dinner. So yes, it was a very sociable room.
Do you know, there is something magical about this, isn't there? To think of the people who... Actually, you can get quite emotional about it. I mean, Churchill and Clemmy being here and living their lives here with their family is amazing enough. But the people who must have come here and sat on the sofas in front of a roaring fire and, as you say, had a drop of sherry or something before dinner. You have to breathe it in and think about it, don't you?
Yes, it's easy to forget when you're here every day, but we know that Charlie Chaplin visited, so he demonstrated his walk for the Churchill family.
In this
well,
room?
in the
Somewhere
house.
Here, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I would imagine.
Along
this
the
is where there's the room.
Yes.
In the years after the war, other film stars, Laurence Olivier came here.
Yes.
Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was a guest.
Really?
President Truman. So yeah, the great and the good came to Chartwell and were entertained here. And Churchill had a habit of being late for dinner. He was generally a little bit late. So you would imagine that people would be here being entertained by Clementine while they waited for him to have his bath and come up and appear for dinner.
Baths were terribly important to Churchill.
He did
weren't they?
sometimes have 2 baths a day. So he would have one in the late morning after he'd done some work before he went out and about for the day. And then he would have a 4 p.m. nap. It was important to him because he was a night owl, so he did a lot of his writing late at night. So that 4 p.m. nap was his power nap before dinner, but then possibly another bath before he came to see his guests.
And of course, in the days of no television, no computers, no internet, the card table becomes very... And they actually, or he invented his own card game called Bezique. I think he and Lady Churchill, in fact, this is probably Bezique. I don't think anyone plays it now, but this is where they sat and played cards in the evening.
It is, and it's lovely because it feels like a room which is very open and hospitable with lots of people, but actually this is a corner for 2, isn't it? You can imagine the 2 of them here. And we know that hospitality was very generous here at Chartwell and that people had a lovely time, but I can imagine after dinner coming up here to play cards was a real pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. But again, it's very big, it's very grand, and just think of the people who were here.
Yeah.
But it's still cosy and quite intimate, isn't it? Now, Andrea, this looks a bit more... Well, this looks a much older part of the house.
Yes, so this is the oldest part of the house. It goes back to the Tudor period. This is Churchill's study.
Oh.
And we consider it the beating heart of Chartwell because this is where the speeches were written and the articles and the books from which he won the Nobel Prize. So yes, and this is where he started his day and he ended his day coming back here to write as well.
This is a very dominant male, alpha male sort of room, isn't it?
You really feel where you come in here that you've come to Churchill's bolt hole. The house is very elegant and beautiful and you can see Clemmie's hand, but when you come in here, it's very much his space.
And what sort of work did he do here then? I mean, just writing speeches, writing books?
Absolutely. So he was Chancellor of the Exchequer in the 1920s, so he wrote the country's budget here, and that was what he worked on. But then in the 1930s, when he was out of government, he earned his living as a writer, so he regularly wrote articles for newspapers, and then he also had commissions for books. Yeah.
So this desk, and it's huge.
Yes.
Would have been the desk at which he wrote some of those amazing speeches?
Yes, and I think probably the most important speeches that were written here were in the 1930s because, of course, he was at Downing Street during the war. But in the 1930s, he started to write articles and give speeches in Parliament where he was sounding the alarm about what was happening in Germany. Yes. And so after his guests had come here and he'd been gathering this intelligence, he would try and encapsulate that and try and persuade his parliamentary colleagues to respond differently to what was happening in Europe. And although he wasn't always successful, I think it was those speeches that made him a real authority figure and were probably the reason that then Britain turned to him and asked him to return to government and eventually become Prime Minister. So some of what he wrote here really did change history.
I mean, presumably, as with any study, you tend to put on the walls and around things that really mean something or things that are gifts. Are there any particular things we should look at?
You can see that his love of art is reflected here, but obviously his love of the royal family as well.
Yes.
In his bedroom, he had pictures of the royal family next to his bed, including the picture of himself on VE Day on the balcony at Buckingham Palace.
That's in his bedroom?
That's in his bedroom, and you can see there's a picture of the young Queen Elizabeth II there, and that's right opposite his desk.
I mean, everything means something to him. The amazing thing about this room, having that incredibly high vaulted ceiling, is that in a very male, alpha male sort of way, you can hang these banners. What's the significance of that particular flag?
So this is the first Union flag that was raised over Rome after it was liberated at the end of the Second World War.
That's the one?
That's the one, yes.
The turning point for Italy?
Yes, a really important turning point in the war, and it's been here, since Churchill's time.
Then there's this enormous painting, Which is, of course, his birthplace.
It is. Blenheim. It's Blenheim Palace. And I think the fact that was his ancestry was important to him. He was a descendant of the Dukes of Marlborough. So I think the fact that this has such a prominent place in his study just goes to show that Blenheim remained important to him.
And he idolised the Duke of Marlborough, the first Duke of Marlborough, didn't he?
Yes, we have a wonderful portrait that he was gifted as well of the Duke of Marlborough here. So yes, that sense of his history is very much in this room.
Yes, he sort of grew up wanting to be the sort of person that Marlborough was, and he was fixated on the idea that one day he would save this country.
It does feel like a birthright, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, he was descended from this family was really significant. But also there are other members of his family. His mother, Jenny Jerome, here in the sketch.
Very prominent American socialite.
Yes, absolutely.
He worshipped her, although she didn't have an awful lot of time for him.
No, I think sometimes loved from afar. But he was proud of the fact that he was in part an American. I think he played on that in his relationship with America. So yes, I think she was a very beautiful woman and very charismatic and he was very charmed by her.
There you are, the little portraits that are just crammed in the wall, people who were very important to him, FDR obviously.
Yes.
But here we come to this magnificent sort of standing desk. So maybe he stood with lots of papers all around. And who is that?
So this is Clemmy, this is his wife, Clementine Churchill, and it was painted while he was in the trenches in World War I, in her youth, and looking very beautiful, but a very atmospheric painting as well in this room.
She was a very sort of aristocratic-looking figure, wasn't she, from the beginning?
Yes, she was tall, she was striking, she was beautiful, she was elegant, and I think that really added to some of their charisma as a couple. He obviously adored her for his whole life, and they were together for many, many happy years.
Yes, it worked well, didn't it? And it's interesting as well here in Chartwell, her bedroom is very, very feminine.
Yes.
Very big and beautiful, actually.
Yes.
And this room is the absolutely sort of male alternative.
It is, and what it symbolises is that Chartwell was a place of work as well as being a family home. And in fact, he had a small team of secretaries who are always with him, who have offices and space here as well. So although it feels like a very domestic space, there was always behind the scenes a lot going on, and this is really the hub of that.
So this, Andrea, is the most amazing room. It's the dining room. Gosh, isn't it splendid?
It is. This is another of the rooms that is in the wing that the Churchills added. And as you can see, it's got the most amazing panoramic views right out across the valley. And so this was very much the hub of the kind of social life here at Chartwell.
And as you said before, when they added rooms, they wanted every aspect.
Yes.
They wanted the light in from absolutely every area.
Absolutely.
And it's gorgeous. The windows are absolutely fantastic, aren't they?
They're really beautiful. And you can see that this was obviously what Winston wanted when he came to Chartwell, and he really wanted to be able to enjoy this whole view, which is really sheltered on one side, but absolutely spectacular on the other.
Absolutely. And it's beautiful. And what a table. I see it's already laid for tea, which is very kind of you. There's beautiful scones, and there's that Dundee cake.
Yes.
I think we've seen him in so many films demanding his Dundee cake.
Yes, and Mrs. Landermere, who was his cook, who would come here when he was entertaining and cook, used to make the Dundee cake, and it was his favourite. And we still serve it in the cafe because it feels,
right?
Yeah, absolutely, it feels a really important part of life at Chartwell.
My goodness, though, if you had a seat here, you were somebody special, or family, weren't
Or
you?
family, or friends. It was a really eclectic group who would come here, and so yes, it was the great and the good, but also the younger members of the family would be here. They had a table to dine at as well, so it was
It's
a family
interesting.
atmosphere.
Not only do the young people have a table of their own, but I see that there's a curtain that can be drawn across
Yes.
to keep the young ones over there.
Yes, and also perhaps to keep this warm because it is a big room to
Yes.
heat.
Yes,
So
it
yes,
is.
it is.
What sort of people do we know would have sat here and eaten their meals with the Churchills?
Well, this was really the centre of what we think of as dinner party diplomacy in the 1930s particularly. So we know T.E. Shaw, Lawrence of Arabia, he came here, he drove up on his motorbike from Devon,
Yeah, cool.
put his robes
Took
on.
his
and
goggles off.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
he had a swim in the swimming pool, he came here for dinner. So yes, we know that there was a period of time where, really important meetings were happening here. But then after the war, the royal family came, so Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, came, President Truman, Laurence of Olivier was a guest. So whether it were for lunch or for dinner, some stayed, some just came for the day. They came down from London. It would be amazing to have been here to hear the conversation.
Oh, wouldn't if the walls could speak?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely, but maybe just as well they don't. But it's so interesting that once again, in this house, it straddles the two worlds. It looks magnificent, and who wouldn't want a dining room like this, except maybe to heat it. But it straddles that because it's also intimate. Record player over there for some rather lovely background music or whatever.
Yes, and actually, after the war, this became the Churchill's cinema room.
I think this is one of my favourite rooms. It's absolutely lovely. And when the sun comes out, you can just bask by these windows.
Yeah.
Well, we're here out in the gardens now, and Chris is with me. You're head gardener. I can't imagine a more stressful job. I mean, what an amazing place this is.
Well, certainly I feel very privileged to work here and care for this beautiful place.
Tell me about this particular cascade.
This is the Gavin Jones Cascade. It was originally on display at Chelsea Flower Show in 1948, designed by at the time, the incredibly famous garden designer, particularly for water features, Gavin Jones. Lady Churchill went there and she saw this huge cascade system.
It's very big
on
for
display.
The Chelsea Flower Show.
It's enormous, isn't it?
You think now people have a little
postage stamp almost.
Well, yes, but this isn't. And it was this big, was it, at Chelsea?
Yeah. If anything, it was actually slightly bigger. Anyway, Lady Churchill saw it on display there and fell in love with it. And Gavin Jones said to her, "You're more than welcome to have this once it's finished at the flower show, as long as you pay to have these huge slabs of stone moved to Chartwell."
So these enormous rocks that are all the backdrop to the cascade, that's all part of it?
That
would have been moved here?
All part of it. They were all craned here, these huge slabs of Forest of Dean sandstone, and then rearranged slightly to fit slightly more organically into the existing landscape here at Chartwell.
It's a beautiful cascade. Is it a natural spring?
Yes, this is fed by 3 natural springs. We do have additional pumps as well, but as you can see, the water at the moment that's trickling there behind us is fed from one of our three native natural springs.
Well, it was a good choice, wasn't it, that she made, because it fits beautifully. And the water from here goes downhill, and we can see these various layers of fantastic water features. That a swimming pool?
That's the second swimming pool here at Chartwell.
So there's the swimming pool, and then the water even goes from the swimming pool down to the lake?
It does. It goes through the swimming pool and then through the upper lake and the lower lake, and then it's pumped back up and then comes all the way down through our pond system, back down through this cascade and starts its journey all over again.
Circular. Isn't that wonderful? But he was an outdoor architect. Managing the gardens and grounds as you do, you must have really come to admire what they did with this place.
Absolutely. They really did make this garden a space within a landscape and made it their own as well. So obviously we've got the addition of the cascade here. We have Churchill's surrounding wall around the walled garden. The lakes were extended by Churchill, and they really did put their own stamp on this space.
Yeah, you can see the love, can't
Absolutely.
you? Chris, why are walled gardens so special?
They trap the heat into a garden through winter. They stop wind exposure, and they just create this really intimate space. And this walled garden at Chartwell has that extra special element in the fact that the walls were built by Sir Winston Churchill.
All of them?
All of these walls were built by Sir Winston Churchill kind of throughout the late 1920s, early 1930s.
And do we know how long it took him to build this walled garden?
Well, we know that it was built kind of throughout his period where he was out of political office and the period at which the family really felt at home at Chartwell and spent a lot of time here.
Yeah, but that is amazing. How tall are they? 12, 15, 30?
They're all thereabouts.
Yeah, a foot. That is incredible. And so he used to come here, and he became a master bricklayer, didn't he?
He did. He did also have a few bricklayers' mates who worked alongside him, and he even recruited his children at one point as well to help pass the bricks.
And some parts of this garden they've been photographed. He's been photographed at work.
He
has,
has, yeah.
Where was the spot, do you think?
So we do have a spot just over there on the top terrace.
Let's go and have a look.
And we also have some photographs of him working down at the bottom end of the walled garden as well.
Yeah, so do you think this might have been the spot that that photograph was taken?
I think it very, very well might have been. So we can kind of marry it up with where the locations of the old greenhouses used to be, which were sited up here, and we've kind of worked out this is roughly there or thereabouts the spot where he was actually photographed building this wall.
And look at the view that unfolds before you.
Absolutely.
Where are we looking at?
So
is this the Weald of Kent?
This is the Weald of Kent. We're at the top end of a valley here, so we have a hill on the other side of a hill over there, and then we just look out over this completely unchanged view.
It's I come from the Midlands. You come from the Midlands.
I do.
Where it is beautiful, and absolutely beautiful in certain parts of Worcestershire, Oxfordshire, but this is spectacular, isn't it?
That view encapsulate Churchill's vision of the Garden of England. I often like to think that that was his vision when he was thinking about saving Britain.
Yes.
That was the view he thought of.